Hi there, I'm Harley, and I'm here with a brand new video. In this video, I'll be reviewing the entire Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, both the good and the bad. Enjoy watching. Poppy Playtime is a video horror game released in October 2021 by Mob Entertainment. The game is set in 2005, and as an ex-employee of the Playtime CO toy factory, we returned to the factory due to a letter we received. Upon our return, we uncover the countless truths the factory has been hiding from us. Delving deeper into, we discover a factory where brutal experiments were conducted and hundreds of people were killed. Along the way, we encounter numerous antagonists trying to kill us, including Huggy, Mommy, Catnap, Doughy, and many others. Even if we overcome them all, there are still more truths and antagonists yet to be revealed. This factory is ultra extra massive. We all know that all the antagonists we have faced to the fourth chapter are experiments, and that Dr. Harley Sawyer, whom we know as the head of the experiments, has himself been transformed into one of his own experiments, his mind transferred to a digital form. He was deep inside the factory, at the peak of loneliness, until we came and faced him. The entire factory was silent and shrouded in mystery. On August 8, 1995, during the tragedy known as the Hour of Joy, hundreds of factory workers were killed. The toys launched a rebellion, turning the entire factory into a bloodbath, and only a few workers of the factory managed to escape. We have no information about what happened to them after the tragedy. You probably know almost everything about chapters 1, 2, and 3, but today we're going to talk about the latest chapter. Chapter 4, Safe Haven. The game is released exactly 1 year after the release of Chapter 3. The game is fully story-driven. Until Chapter 4 was released, we knew Chapter 3 as the most story-driven game, but with the release of Chapter 4, we became even more immersed in the story. In this chapter, we faced off against the Doctor, Yarnaby, Pianosaurus, and Doughy, fought and defeated them, except for Pianosaurus. Almost everyone who played the game protested why we couldn't fight Pianosaurus, as known as the experiment 1163. Why it died so easily, and the developers had no answer to that. But theoretically, if we had fought Pianosaurus, we wouldn't have encountered Doughy in any other way. Doughy saved us from Pianosaurus. I can also say that I felt really bad about this event, and why we only saw the Pianosaurus for such a short time in the game. Damn it. One of the antagonists we encountered in the game was Yarnaby, one of the bigger bodies. It called the experiment 1166, which is literally like the Doctor's cat. Obeying his commands, listening to him, and not doing anything without his orders. Yarnaby's death was a bit sad. Dying in a fire must have been very painful. Of course, I have things to say about the Doctor, but you probably know most of it already. As I mentioned earlier, he was a scientist and the head of the Bigger Bodies Initiative. His failed experiments eventually caused him to fall out of sight of the factory authorities. They saw him as a threat, and with the help of other doctors, they transferred his mind into a digital computer form. They turned Harley Sawyer into the experiment 1354, and that's how he became the Doctor we know today. Now it's Doughy's turn. Doughy was a Doman known as the Experiment 1322. In the game, he saved us from Pianosaurus and introduced himself as an ally. He consisted of 3 children, Kevin, Matthew, and Jack. Among the 3 children, Kevin was the most troublesome, with an uncontrollable temper. Before being transformed into an experiment, he was already fighting with the other children in Home Sweet Home. Dr. Sawyer had said that Kevin was an ideal subject for the experiment. We saw Jack in the intro of the game, visiting the factory with his family, when he fell into one of the dough cauldrons as a result of an accident and lost his life. The factory authorities told the family that they would compensate them for Jack's death by turning him into a living toy, into an experiment, and the family agreed. We have no information or images of Matthew, but we know that he, like the others, is one of the orphans at Home Sweet Home. Yes, we talked about the antagonists we saw in Chapter 4. One of the things I'd say about the Doctor was that he died so easily. It was really ridiculous that an antagonist who was potentially stronger and more intelligent than the other antagonists died so quickly. Of course, we all know he'll be back in the next chapters because he couldn't die that easily. Now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, Huggy's return. He came back very unexpectedly, in fact. The developers were making small references about his return in the second and third chapters. In Chapter 2, we saw Huggy's bloody feathers in the water treatment center and the Wacko Wuggy minigame. And in Chapter 3, we saw his hallucination, his nightmare form. There was a small but confusing detail in Huggy's return. When we first saw Huggy from a distance in the lab, we thought he was Kissy because of the lighting, but as we got closer, we realized that he was really Huggy. Some shitty theory makers say that Huggy actually died, and we saw Kissy as Huggy at the end of Chapter 4 because of the red smoke. I think this is a big lie. When we look carefully in the scene where the prototype explodes the ventilator shaft, Kissy was holding us, but her right arm, which is the arm she was holding us with, was somehow burned, damaged, and became weak. We see that Kissy's right arm is torn off and falls down with us. In the scene where Huggy returns, we see that the color of the object coming from far is pink due to its shape and lighting. We thought it was Kissy, but when we look carefully again, we see that the left arm of that object is torn off at the elbow. This means that the object we saw at the end of Chapter 4 was not Kissy, it was Huggy as we know. In addition to the characters in the game, we also saw VHS tapes that highlight the story even more. There are 50-minute VHS tapes, and they are all a source of mystery, tapes that explain the story. From my perspective, these tapes make the game much better, more detailed, and more enjoyable, along with the gameplay. In general, there are many things I can criticize about the game, and I criticized most of them. If there are any other details that I missed or do not criticize, I will upload second part of this video. If you like this video type, you can support it by liking and commenting so that it is featured in the algorithm. See you in the next video. Goodbye.